And why is that so important? And the why question for me is so important in everything we do. So it is about protecting what's working, protecting what is good, and then looking at what do we need to change. And the reality, in my opinion,
Hello everyone, welcome to the Actionable ESG Talks series brought to you by AKFI, Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, the world's first nonprofit industry association committed to bridging the gap between ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. My name is Isabella. I am the co-host here with Manuel, another co-host. Manuel is also the executive director at the AKFI. And our special guest today, Gina. Hi, Gina. Good to have you today.
A real pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, Gina is talking with us all the way from UK. Great to have our global speakers gathering together, meeting our global audience, and thanks to this talk series. A little bit about Gina. Gina has a few motto or slogan, and also is what she lived for. Be your authentic self, find genuine power, find self-confidence, and discover your true purpose. And this is what Gina has been passionate and really fight for it. Gina is the #1 international best-selling author, motivational and radical change catalyst speaker, empowerment award-winning spiritual mentor, transformation leadership and media trainer, and coach with over 30 years of experience. And today we're going to have some nice talk with Gina about our purpose-driven leadership in today's fast-evolving digital age, building a sustainable future together. And welcome again, Gina. To start our conversation, please share, how could you define the enlightened leadership, and what are the trends you see in promoting and achieving sustainability, ESG, and digital transformation goals?
So for me, enlightened leadership is about leading with authenticity, integrity, compassion, and the courage to do what's right rather than what's easy or self-serving. And I think it's never been more important to have leaders who have the capacity to lead from within. They've done the work on themselves first, that they take radical responsibility for themselves, how they think, believe, act, and speak, and then nurture that same radical responsibility, people taking it for themselves in their team. And if you think about what's going on with AI and all of the digital transformation, one of the things that strikes me that's going to be absolutely crucial moving forward is for leaders to come from a place of authenticity, for them to have huge integrity, because like all technology, it can be used for good and it can be used for evil. And it's going to be down to individual leaders to determine whether or not they and their team, their organization, their country, whoever we're talking about, whether they're going to use all of this digital transformative technology in a way that's going to enhance the human race and protect the planet, or it's going to be used for self-serving gain. Nice. And we are at a watershed. And I believe everybody that is a leader has a responsibility to look at this technology, not to dismiss it, even though they might want to, but to look at it and to make sure that the dog is wagging the tail rather than the tail wagging the dog. And so I think more and more leaders at every level, within the family, within organizations, non-profit, profit, whoever it is, they have a responsibility to not just allow things to happen, but to make conscious decisions about how it should be used. Everything we do is a choice. Everything. How we think, how we speak, how we act. And every choice has consequences. The challenge is when we fail to make a conscious choice, there are still consequences. And that for me is the difference between an enlightened leader in the digital age, is that they recognize that they have to make conscious choices in terms of what they're doing or not, how they're using the technology, how that's interacting with their people, and what impact it's having on their staff and on their client base or their customers, and how they are going to take that forward. So it's a huge responsibility, but it requires conscious decision making.
I think you, in the introduction, Isabella mentions also radical leadership. And I was very interested to see what is the radical part. I think there are many leadership definitions, and how you combine a really very different approach to leadership.
So the part in my bio that talks about radical is that when I speak, it's about radical change catalyst. And I think so often what we do is we fiddle at the edges, that something isn't working. And because people don't want to really interrogate what's going on, they make little changes and they pretend that they are actually changing something. And I'll give you a couple of examples. But before I do, I think when I talk about radical change, I do not mean throwing everything out. I think it's important that as enlightened leaders, we look at what is working, what do we want to protect, and why is that so important? And the why question for me is so important in everything we do. So it is about protecting what's working, protecting what is good, and then looking at what do we need to change. And the reality, in my opinion, is the thing that needs to change is we as people. If we always do what we've always done, we're always going to get what we've always had already. And so the radical change comes in, what is it I need to do as a leader? How do I need to be different, do different, in order to create the change that's required? And every change has to start with that inner conversation that we have with us, each of us as individuals, and then collectively within whichever group that you belong to. But it has to start, in my opinion, with ourselves. And then we have to take radical responsibility, total and utter, authentic responsibility for how we think. 95% of our thoughts are habitual, don't cross the conscious mind at all. So how many, if you're listening to this, how often, for example, somebody says something in a particular tone of voice and it triggers a response that's nothing to do with the words. It's to do with the tone of voice. So that person then bites back and that triggers the other person. And before you know, there's a row and nobody knows what the argument's about. But it's because somebody was triggered by a tone of voice or by a few words. But if you're conscious about how you operate, when somebody says something that irritates or upsets or angers you, before you bite and you have a retort, you take a moment to say, what's really going on here? Can I hear my mother nagging me or my father criticizing me or a teacher telling me I was stupid in that voice? What were the words? So what's really going on here? What's the motive? And then giving a really thought out response, which is appropriate. But we all get caught up in this habitual pattern. And so for me, if you're taking radical responsibility, you have to be conscious about everything you are and everything you do.
No, thank you. And I just need to point out that actually companies, especially large and very large companies, are facing a transformational challenge that comes from a couple of different directions. One is technology, and this is the digital transformation. One is environmental and social challenges that are part of sustainability and governance. So I guess, and actually this is reflected in the average lifespan of a CEO nowadays that is going down because the expectations from the leaders are I would say exponential. They increase exponentially as compared to maybe before the time of digitalization and AI, let's say last 10 years. So I think what you discussing, Gina, and what you're presenting becomes a survival, a quest for survival for leaders. They cannot lead, as you said, linearly, just incremental improvements from today's conditions.
I'd go so far as to say I don't want leaders to just survive. I want them to be thriving, and I want the people that they work with to be thriving. And one of the other aspects of an enlightened leader is that they engage with their team. And so they're not on their own. They're prepared to say, I don't know, and I need some help. So they'll take external help. But most importantly, they will harness the combined experience, expertise, IQ, EQ, creativity, solution finding of their team. And so no longer do I think that leaders can just see themselves as telling people what to do. That's a very limited old way of being. I think this is about how do you engage your people meaningfully so that they've got ownership of the vision and the mission, and then engaging with them. So, right, this is where we're at. This is where we want to go. So let's together find a way forward. Now, that as an approach does many things that are really constructive and positive and absolutely vital for the sustainability, not only for the company, but for the individuals involved. You know, in 2019, which is the last figures that I think have been published for the UK, days off due to stress cost the economy £75 billion. And presenteeism, which is where people are present but not firing on all cylinders, cost more than double that. And that's a lot of that stress was created because the leadership was poor. Leaders were not engaging people. They were just piling on the pressure, setting targets that were not achievable. People didn't feel valued. They didn't feel that they had ownership of it. If you want a culture where people are psychologically safe, where their well-being is nurtured, because ultimately that costs the company, not only in terms of lost days, but lost continuity, lost reputation. If you want to have a great team who are working together, then the leader has to see themselves in a very different light. And the job of that leader is to choose great people, to nurture and grow the potential of those people, and to act as the servant leader, as Covey used to say, act as the servant leader, facilitating those people to be able to do their job more than well, and to do that feeling valued, feeling that they are making a positive contribution, and that's recognized. And we know from the research that when people feel that they're really making a difference within an organization and that their contributions are valued, that has greater motivation than money. And I believe one of the other problems of sustainability is keeping great staff. And if the culture is poor, if they don't feel valued, they will walk away and somebody else will have the advantage. So if you want great people, you have to think about how you are going to grow them within their role, grow them beyond their role, and keep them within your remit so that you can have the benefits of all of the investment in them that you have made.
And I think something that, on the same topic, but from another perspective, it's something that links you and Isabella actually in the topic of ethical behavior, showing the ethics and instilling a culture of ethical of strong ethics in the company. And we know many companies that had got in troubles because of lack of ethics from the top down. And
it has to come from the top down. It has to come top down. People have to model the values. And I think one of the problems is people bandy about values and they talk about the words, but they don't collectively within their organizations talk about the behaviors that underpin those values. So you think of the word excellence, everybody says we strive for excellence, but what does it look like in the context, not only of your company as a whole, but in the context of each department, each team? And that needs to be language that is everyday parlance, if you like. It can't be just words in the handbook or words behind the reception. It's got to be living and breathing and people engaging with together, deciding what does excellence look like in the context of whatever. So a very simple example, working with a hotel, working with the chambermaids. What does excellence look like in the context of a bathroom or a bedroom? If you're talking about a manufacturing company, what does excellence look like in terms of the quality of our product? If we've got lots of customers complaining that something isn't right, is that because of the product or is that because of the customer service? Either way, we need to know what excellence looks like and strive for that every day.
With the introduction, we started to talk about AI and the introduction of technology. I think we have an extra challenge because AI can provide unethical, biased information to the leaders. So I think now the responsibility for the leaders is to know what's right from wrong. And maybe, I don't know if Isabella wants to add something here.
Oh, yes. With artificial intelligence, we have another challenges to our humanity, in my opinion. Yeah. And I always say that I think it's critical for us to revisit what's our role in front of technology and what's is irreplaceable as a human being. And then I think a lot of time we're confused and we're comparing us with machines and we don't appreciate our unique advantage. Those irreplaceable qualities, our intuitive, our intelligence, and our inner voice that you mentioned. Talk to yourself. You know the answer instead of following what the machine is telling you. So things like that. It's definitely critical for us to continue thinking what's the right approach.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that at the moment, my sense check, although I haven't done any research about that, is that, for example, banks and big organizations have put chatbots in there. And there are several occasions, my pet hate, I have to say, where there is no way you can speak to a human being. There's no option. You can only do it through the website and the chatbots. And if the chatbots are not able to understand what you're saying, the frustration level that comes with that, the time scale where you're trying to sort out something that previously would have taken you 5 minutes on the telephone, or if you were in town and talking to somebody within the bank, has now multiplied, logarithmically, so you can spend 2.5 hours on something that previously was 5 minutes. And I think there's going to be a really big backlash that people are getting fed up with it, and they will move to organizations that actually still have a human face. And I think some people very quickly say, well, that's an age thing, and I accept that. I'm long in the tooth, but